Chapter 34. Did you find him? Yachi shook her head. Shit. Kei pinched the bridge of his nose and willed himself to calm down. The last scene didn't require much acting on his part. But he couldn't look as anxious as he felt. Shoyo hadn't stayed like he'd asked him to. And he wasn't answering Kei's text messages. Are they ready? What's the holdup? Trouble with the cat. They're bringing in a different one. Yachi eyed Kei's shaking hands. She sat down next to him and put her hand on his knee. Maybe you could tell me what's really going on between you and Shoyo? Kei stood up, needing space. He was wearing dark trousers, a turtleneck sweater, and boots when it was 75 degrees outside. He wanted to rip the clothes off and go running naked through the lot, screaming at the top of his lungs. That's how wound up he was. He went to run his fingers through his loose hair. But Yachi shouted, "Ah, don't ruin your hair." He was stuck there, helpless. And Shoyo was probably getting on a flight to New York. Since his scenes had been shot already. Shoyo was done for the season, but Kei still had at least 3 more days of work. He had so much to say. So many apologies to make. So many hugs and kisses to give. So many professions of his love. Real love. Was it too late? He didn't know. And it was killing him. A loud knock on the door made them both jump. "We need you in 5. Someone shouted. Yachi stood up. It looks like they found a cat. Yachi? Kei couldn't believe these words were about to come out of his mouth. Can you drive me home tonight? I need. Just say it. Let someone in. It's time. It's long overdue. Stop hiding. I need to tell you everything. And action. The apartment door opened and Leo quickly dropped the bouquet of flowers to his side, hiding them behind his back. I'm sorry. I think I must have the wrong apartment. Leo Harden, right? The man picked up his cat. And that's when Leo's eyes narrowed in on the beautiful gold watch on the man's wrist. Cut. Okay, let's get a close-up of the cat and the watch. JJ stood behind Kei and helped him remove his overcoat. All done for the day. Kid. Kei turned around and gave JJ a tight hug. He held on for longer than he normally would. Thank you, JJ. It's gonna be a great ending to a great season. And this show isn't going anywhere. Kei pulled away and nodded. I know, everyone killed it. We should have a nice cast party. Maybe at my house? JJ's mouth fell open. I'd love to see your new digs. Shoyo said you did an incredible job on the renovation. Guilt tugged at Kei's heart. He'd kept everyone at a distance for so long. That needed to change. I'll get Yachi to plan something fun. We'll include the kids too. I have a huge pool that needs to be played in. Sounds fun, Yachi said, walking up to them and taking Kei's coat. Let's go. I've ordered some fabulous Indian food for dinner. Yachi twirled a lock of her blonde curly hair as she paced barefoot by the pool. That asshole, she exclaimed for the 3rd time. I knew I didn't like him the minute I saw him at the funeral. Do you want to take these leftover samosas home to Trent? Kei held up the plate. Yachi waved him off. Nah, he hates Indian food. Kei leaned back in his chair and sipped on his wine. It felt good to tell someone the whole sordid story. He felt a little lighter. And Yachi was such a good listener. Asking questions but not judging. So that's why you wanted to smoke this morning? Yachi didn't wait for an answer. I guess it makes sense. I mean, I think I'd probably want to kill myself if I literally had Shoyo Hinata in my bed and then I fucked it up. So much for not judging. Aren't you straight, Yachi? She stopped pacing. I'm fluid. Fluid? Kei asked with a chuckle. What the hell is fluid? Fluid, Kei. It depends on the person. Kei put up his hands in defeat. Okay, you're fluid. Yachi sat down and leaned on the table, suddenly looking very serious. Is Shoyo a wonderful lover? He is. Isn't he? Kei groaned. I can't talk about that. You can. Yachi said with an encouraging nod. You really can. Maybe he could say a few things. No details. Of course. Nappa was wonderful. So romantic. So different than it ever was for me with a woman. It felt right. You know? Just. So right. Yachi looked like a hungry puppy dog, waiting for another treat. Kei chuckled. Okay, yes. Shoyo is sexy and passionate and Kei sighed as a feeling of euphoria washed over him. Yeah, he's goddamned amazing in bed. Yachi clapped her hands in excitement. I knew it. Her expression fell when Kei buried his face in his hands and started to cry. Shit. It had been one of the longest flights of his life. The woman sitting next to Shoyo had talked through most of the flight to New York, leaving him feeling even more exhausted than he already was. He desperately needed a bed and a good night's sleep. His phone beeped several times after powering back up. Texts from Kei. Where are you? I was hoping we could talk. Please call me. He couldn't stay at the studio like Kei had asked. His brain and his heart were both running on overload. Lights flashing red. Warning of imminent failure. What he really needed was time to think things through. The woman sitting next to him had prevented that, along with the nap he'd hoped to take. And then there was Tobio. What the hell was he going to do about Tobio? Shoyo didn't have the first clue how to handle it. He could worry about that tomorrow. Right now, he needed to find a bed and catch up on some much-needed sleep. Shoyo turned the key and paused before he opened the door to his dad's apartment, trying to brace himself for the onslaught of emotions that were sure to hit him full force. The scent would hit him first. It was a unique mixture of his father's cologne and the old rare books he collected. Spicy and musty. The photos would be next. Family. Shoyo's life. Daria Hinata. He opened the door and kept his head down, eyes on the floor. He dropped his suitcase and found the nearest chair. It was too late at night to fall on his knees and wail at God again for leaving him parentless. He huddled at the small dining table, afraid to lift his gaze. And then he saw it. The letter he'd written to his dad after his funeral. It was sitting on the table, right where he'd left it a week ago. He slid a shaky hand across the table and pulled it to him. Dear Dad. No, he shouldn't read it. Not tonight. Not when he felt so broken inside. But then, a name popped off the paper. About halfway down the first page. Kei. Shoyo gripped the paper with both hands. Dear Dad. You're gone. I hope you're not sad about that. I hope you and Mom are dancing together the way you used to. I hope you're happy again. We celebrated your life today. Some of your students were there. They cried right along with me. They said you were their favorite professor. Not just a teacher, but also a friend. I already knew that about you. But it was nice to hear. I can't really function right now. But I'll try to get back on my feet. I know you would want that for me. You always pushed me to do my best and be my best. I'll keep trying to honor your memory. Kei is here with me. I lied to you about him. I guess we both lied to each other about certain things. I'll forgive you if you'll forgive me. Scratch that. I forgive you, Dad. I miss you so much. Life is pretty terrible without you right now. I mentioned that Kei is here with me. I think I'm in love with him. He's everything, Dad. And I know it's a lofty goal. But I really think we could have a love like you and Mama had. I just have to say those words out loud. But it's scary. Shoyo folded up the letter. He couldn't read anymore. He laid his head on the table and closed his eyes. Kei didn't want to move. He stared at the curtains blowing in the breeze, not even caring that he'd left the guesthouse door open all night. It reminded him of that morning in Napa, when he woke up and saw Shoyo sitting just beyond the curtains. Am I getting up? Or are you coming back to bed? He whispered. Of course there would be no reply this time. After he'd seen Yachi to her car, Kei had wandered back to the guesthouse, longing to feel closer to Shoyo. Some of his things were still there. Most of them, actually. He'd torn off his own shirt and put on one of Shoyo's t-shirts. Then he'd fallen into his bed and hadn't moved until his alarm went off. That was 15 minutes ago. He needed to get up and get to work. He checked his phone again, just in case Shoyo had texted back in the last 3 minutes. Give him time, Yachi had said. Let him sort this thing out with Tobio. He'll call if he needs you. That was Kei's fear, that Shoyo wouldn't ever call. He sat up and put his feet on the floor, the pain and regret hitting him hard again. He grabbed Shoyo's pillow and held it tightly, breathing in the remnants of his scent. Shoyo zipped up his coat, trying to keep the wind out. He had his dad's Yankees cap on his head and sunglasses covering his eyes. He didn't want to take the chance of being recognized. Not today. He waited, impatiently, on their favorite bench in Central Park. He didn't want to have this conversation in a coffee shop, in case it got ugly. He hoped it wouldn't come to that today. But Tobio wasn't known for his discretion. He wasn't known for his punctuality, either. Shoyo was just about to send a "where the hell are you" text when he saw Tobio's feet. He looked up, but didn't smile. "Thanks for meeting me here. Let's walk. I need a coffee." Tobio gave Shoyo a sideways glance as they walked. "It looks like you're hiding from the world." Shoyo pulled the faux fur hood up over his baseball cap. "I am." Tobio threaded his arm through Shoyo's. "It's good to see you." "Is it? Because you're blackmailing me, Tobio? You're ruining my life again. Taking away my livelihood. Not to mention your inexplicable actions last week on the day of my father's funeral. How could you possibly think this is a friendly visit? You're right. I shouldn't have asked you to marry me on such a painful day." Shoyo let out a cynical laugh. "Could you imagine ever being able to celebrate our engagement anniversary? Yay. My father died on this day 2 years ago. 3 years ago. 4 years ago." Shoyo yanked his arm away. "I don't even know who you are anymore. God. How did it get to this point?" Tobio was Shoyo's heart and soul at one time. His beginning. And the person he thought would be his middle and end too. Now he barely recognized the person walking next to him. "Why, Tobio? Why do you want to ruin me? Is it one of those, if I can't have you, no one can, things? I'm not trying to ruin you. How is that considered ruining you? I just want us to be who we were always meant to be. A family. Parents. Grandparents. One day." Shoyo shook his head in disbelief. Was Tobio really this dense? And how had he missed it all this time? Has Tobio's academic intelligence overshadowed his emotional immaturity? And what do I tell our children when they ask about our wedding? Dada held a gun to Daddy's head? Blackmailed him? Tobio stopped and grabbed Shoyo's sleeve. "You tell our children that Dada was so in love with Daddy. He'd do anything to keep him." Shoyo's whole body tensed up. It was like talking to a psychopath. "No. Dada dumped Dad. Remember? He didn't do a damn thing to keep him. And now, it's too late, Tobio. I refuse to be tossed to the side until you deem me worthy of your love again. I refuse to be that person to anyone. It's over. You need to move on." Tobio looked away for a moment. "It's him, isn't it? Who? You know who. Tsukihina. He was so rude to me at the funeral. Treating me as if I didn't belong there. I was your father's student. Of course I belonged there." Hearing those words transported Shoyo back in time to the day they'd met. He'd brought lunch to his father's office on campus. They'd almost collided as Tobio walked out of his office. Shoyo was instantly smitten. He was Tobio's from that day forward. And now, almost 5 years later, here they were. "You brought your parents to the funeral. We both know why. And so did Kay. You brought them to meet him. Get his autograph. Take a damn selfie." Shoyo threw his hands in the air. "For someone who claims to be so Catholic, you sure have an interesting way of showing respect for the dead." Tobio sighed. "They wanted to meet you. My love. Bullshit. How long were we together? How many times did your parents refuse to meet me? I'm sorry, okay? How many times do I have to apologize for one little lapse in judgment?" Shoyo couldn't believe what he was hearing. "How many times? You haven't yet. Not for the funeral. Not for Times Square. Not for this ridiculous threat. And certainly not for dumping me after I lost my job." Tobio threw his hands in the air. "I just did. I'm sorry, Sho. Now, can we please go get coffee and talk about our future?" Tobio. Shoyo snapped back. "You are literally ruining my life. Do you understand that? Do you understand how much that makes me hate your ever-loving guts? I hate you, Tobio. Please tell me you understand what I'm saying." Shoyo breathed in deep. "Please tell me you're not some sick psycho who believes love can be manipulated. This isn't a fucking soap opera. Brandon Cartwright isn't going to marry his blackmailer to save the man he loves from a little public humiliation." Shoyo stepped back. He'd never had the urge to hit someone before this very moment. He just wanted to slap some sense into Tobio. Wake him up and make him see who he'd become. He took his cap and sunglasses off and unzipped his coat. Either it had warmed up quickly or he had worked himself into a fervor. "I can't look at you anymore. Tobio, have a good life." He turned and walked away. Having no idea if his words had sunk in. No idea if Tobio would stay quiet. But he had nothing left to say. Nothing left to give the man he once loved. Shit. Shoyo stopped. His hands clenched in his coat pockets. If only it were that easy. Just walk away and never see that beautiful, Horrible face again. Live every day with a hope that Tobio had too much pride. Too much goodness in his heart to ever make the contract public. Nice dream. Shoyo turned back around and shouted. Tobio. Physical pain almost seemed better. It didn't numb the emotional pain. But it gave Kei something different to focus on. His throat was raw. His legs were on fire. His arm. He didn't want to think about how much it would ache when he stopped. The constant push and pull. The braking. The jarring dips and bumps in the trail. His arm would be trashed. But he didn't stop. He'd sent another text before his ride. Please call me. Text. Anything. I'm begging now. Nothing. Fucking nothing. As the security gate closed, Kei let go of his bike, letting it land wherever it cared to. He shed his helmet and shoes before he got to the side gate. His gloves were dropped at the gate. Everything else, shorts, shirt, underwear, sunglasses, all dropped on the way to the pool. He stepped over the edge into the deep end, letting himself sink to the bottom. Kei deserved all this pain. He was so quick to doubt, so quick to hit back, so quick to run, so quick to hurt the man he loved. He came up out of the water sputtering and gasping for air. A cry from deep inside made its way out. He swam to the edge and held on as all the pain and regret poured out of him. Shoyo wasn't coming back.